HR begins to speak business outcomes.
Yeah.
Finance begins to then humanize HR outcomes. Finance is no longer saying, oh, head count reduction, right? Finance is saying, can we then start looking at, the capabilities we have inside? What is our workforce structure looking at?
Yeah.
Can it be more strategic, right? And do we have in-house capabilities so that we are no longer, cutting those head costs that we will still need in the future?
Yeah.
But we are looking at what we have right now and seeing how we can expand employees' capability.
Yeah.
That's HR terms, that's finance terms, and we're all aligned.
Fantastic, Tommy Singh. I think it's been exciting and I really love your response. I want to create a scenario here. This is a board now, right? We're in a boardroom right now. Okay. So, there's a belief that I love what you said about, the finance team looking at stability and the HR also looking at the sustainability, right? Where succession planning and all that comes in, right? Now, there's also a belief that, there's politics in the boardroom. So here now we have 3 men and 1 guy, right? So I want 1 lady, right? So more like, okay, there's a belief that the voices or the voice of women in the boardroom, is very limited. And not only the women, right? Even the minority stakeholders, right? The majority stakeholders are the one taking decisions, regardless of whatever the minority stakeholders are. So in your own opinion, looking at it from the angle of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, how can the board balance this in such a way that decisions are still very, very balanced?
Okay. So there will always be politics in the boardroom, right? That's the one fact that we all need to deal with. There will be politics in the boardroom. But how do we ensure that the voices that are seated on the table all matter? Now, for me, it's not a gender issue. I would always say it's a governance issue, right? Now, this is it. Whether you like it or not, if you have women on the table or you don't have women on the table, do we realize that, there are still informal meetings that happens before the board?
Yeah.
Right? There are still informal groups. You still have dominant voices, right? So you would still have people that will come into your boardroom, board members in the boardroom, but the decisions have already been made outside.
Yesterday night.
Right. I used to work in a firm where the board members need to get the board report before the board meeting. So you're already disadvantaged. So what do you then start to look at? Right? How do you position your agenda? Who speaks first? Sometimes, if you have your dominant voice speak first, that certain people would follow. But at the end of the day, you need to balance it with who speaks last, right? What are the challenging questions that that this board member will definitely spot, right? How do we also enable the environment in such a way that the norms are challenged?
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, the chairman has spoken. Yes, but you are sure that if the ED, right, because that's a very touching point for the ED. If the ED speaks, there is the probability that at the end of the day, what the chairman has said is going to be overturned, because now we're looking at it from different
perspective,
angle.
Yeah.
So definitely it is, how do you structure the boardroom? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter who is seated, but it is for those that are seated. How do we extract the solutions, the strategies, the directions, the thinking, so that at the end of the day is not lost? Because what you see at the end of the day, what you see early is going to determine your future outcomes. So let's take the focus from, the gender that needs to be seated at the table. I would also say have been opportunity, to be in an environment where I didn't have issues with women being seated on the table.
Okay.
And what has worked is, how do we extract the best information, the best strategy? How do we create an environment where every member, they have equal opportunity?
Yeah.
They can challenge the norm, and we come out with the best solution to move us to the expected goal.
Thank you. I would like to share more light on that. But before that, you said something about there's something I want to ask. There's a difference between equality and equity. It's not looking at the minority now, right? So from that angle, let me put it to Temitope. You can be equal, but we are not equal. Things can be equal, decisions can be equal, but in terms of equity, we are not on the same page. So is it a bias that the minority stakeholders are really sidelined in decision making, or is it just a farce? Do you want to share more light on that?
Well, I think generally, and when you talk about equity, it's just speaking to the fact that there is fairness.
Yeah.
And equality doesn't give us that fairness because we can say we're equal, but we're not fair to each other. That's what we're saying, right? So, and I think that, I mean, this may not be a general thing, but that's the truth, that life generally is not fair. Right. There are people who just want to, they would say that let the majority have their say.
Even in the Senate House,
let the minority have their say and then the majority will have their way. Right. So the question would be that why exactly do we have you in the minority? And I think I piggyback to what Toby has said. It's really about then understanding the dynamics and the politics within that boardroom to know that even when you are within the minority, you don't want to stay in the minority forever, but at least you can get a fair share. So that's where equity comes in to say that, yes, I might not be in the majority, but I'm going to get a share that is fair enough, right? And that's then understanding the politics in that room and knowing when to talk, how to talk, because the boardroom really, it's that place where decisions are made, and it's the place where people ask questions about the whys and the hows, right? It's beyond the operational things. But the reality is that some people still feel discontent, right? Even in the boardroom, because they feel like those people are taking decisions but they don't understand the reality of the business. So in the long run, we are humans. And what then is important is this. And I like to say this, that before I ever joined the corporate world, I said this in an event I was in about 2 weeks ago, that I used to think that I would just get a nice job, right? And then I'll be working in a very good organization and there is nothing to add to them, right? But the reality is that the more you get close to every organization, no matter how beautiful it looks outside, you will find that there is always something to improve on. There's always something that is a gap that there is to close, right? So if board members see things from that angle, and even if you are within the minority group and you understand that there is a value that you're supposed to be providing to that business, then you will get information about the operation. You will go beyond just the strategic, and then you'll be bridging the gap between the strategy and the operational reality of that business. And because you're equipped with more information, maybe more than the majority, so to speak, then you are able to bring value when you're having conversations, and then you're able to ask for your fair share, right? Because the devil, I always say, is in the details. Right? As much as you're in the boardroom and then everybody just wants to gloss over issues and then they just want to take those strategic decisions, the question is, how does it exactly work? And if I should then flip back a bit into what you talked about when you were talking about the Enron case. It was about the details, really. Right. So people do all sort of financial engineering, and it was intentional. The people that were running the business, they get listed on the stock exchange, and they saw people buying more of their shares, and then there were some intentionality around it. Unfortunately, some of the auditors were, they were just, they are colluded with the managers of the business as well. Right. And because it was a group work, there was also the Anderson that was doing. Right. So it's something that people have to then go into the details and say what exactly is happening. And so maybe again to add to the fact that when we talk about data is very, very essential, but then you can't rule out the place of the people who manage the data, who extract the data, who collect the data, who analyze the data, and then begin to take decisions about the data and validate the data, most importantly.
Fantastic. I hope you are enjoying this.
If you don't mind, I just want to add a few sentences. From my little experience, the best performing board and management team always come from investors and shareholders appointed board, from an independent point of view. So what that means is you are appointed to represent our interest, no more, no less. Okay? And there is a strategic framework that is already ahead of them. So when the pressure is on the board from investors as well as, the shareholders, that same pressure is cascaded to the senior management.
Yeah.
And the management cascades that,
Down the line. Yeah.
So the issue of equity and equality will have a trade-off in the sense that if we do it wrongly this time and we commit errors, we make mistakes, that might be the end of our tenure. Especially from the point of senior.
Yeah.
So everybody stands on his or her toes by saying no, even if it is a lady that is speaking the truth. Data-driven initiative. We just have to follow that. This is what will lead us to success. That's the point I want to add.
In fact, that's very excellent, because that brings us to the next question, which is to say, there are so many technology driven, softwares and solutions here today. And I can't remember, maybe Tommy used to talk about IT governance. So let's talk about IT now and finance, right? Let's look at it from the human capital and financial team. How should the company, or how should the board members prepare the IT and finance team for a future proof, like in 2020, 2030 something? How should the leadership team, let me not just say board, how should the leadership team begin to structure or restructure the IT team in such a way that it's future proof?
Okay. So we got into an era where we can't run away from automation, technology, in managing our processes, whether they are finance or the enterprise processes. So, for example, at this age, invoicing is no more manual. Okay. So it has to be electronic. And, you can't do that when technology has not been brought into the fold. So what we are looking at is, whether it is from finance, it is from IT, it is from procurement, it's from HR, we have to accept the fact that as an enterprise, our processes have to be automated and they are tech-based, tech-driven. And taking that further, every board member or the committee serving with this responsibility must be, IT literate. For example, if you are using a tool in AI or whatever measure or approach you want to use in this regard, we are not only leaving it for the IT managers or the senior management team. The respective member of that committee at the board level must be literate about that too, so that when outcomes are presented, you can do a kind of self-assessment of what has been presented, in case there are errors, in case there are leakages, or maybe you have a whole lot of exposure leakages online that you can mitigate, so that the exposure in terms of risk to the business is not that huge. So my response or my position in this regard will be that there should be harmony between whatever we want to achieve and our intention in getting it done. So you find out that when I was talking about e-invoicing, the board will have set a time, for example, for a quarterly report. The quarterly report is to have been submitted, or must have been submitted, say, on the 5th of the first day of the new month of the new quarter. Okay? Where you have a manual finance environment, an accounting system, where papers still apply, that may be tedious. You might find out that at the end of the day, everybody, struggles to submit his or her report, even on the 6th and the 7th. So the board will sit, okay, if we are going this way in terms of automation, in terms of technology deployment, what exactly are we looking at? So having identified the specific, approach we are using, both the management as well as the board members should be literate about it. Now, to do a kind of proofreading, according to what you have said, I would suggest that the literacy and the knowledge obtained from, that choice or that preference must give us a gauge, must give us a sense that whatever that happens in the future or whatever that happens in the present time will enable us to know what particular choice we are making in the future. I don't know if I've been able to make
yes. I think
I don't know if I've been able to answer you very well.
Yes, very correctly. And I think that it's very important to know that